Here's a number that nobody in Aso Rock wants you to hear right now. 37%. That is President Bola Tinubu's national approval rating at midterm. Not 70%, not 55%, 37%. Which means more than 6 out of every 10 Nigerians, when asked directly, "Do you approve of this man's performance?" said no. Now here's the part that keeps the people around Tinubu awake at night. The North, the same North that gave him the votes he needed to cross that constitutional 25% threshold in 2023, the same North is now quietly withdrawing. The Sai Tinubu chants that rang out across Kaduna, Kano, and Katsina in 2022 have gone mute. And the Christian communities of the Middle Belt, Plateau, Benue, Southern Kaduna, Taraba, and Nasarawa, the ones who rejected his Muslim ticket in 2023 and moved to Peter Obi, the signals are pointing in the same direction again. So here's the question nobody is asking loudly enough. If the North rejects Tinubu in 2027, both Muslim and Christian, who actually wins that election? Stay with me, because the answer changes everything you thought you knew about 2027. Before we go deeper, if you're just finding Naijanewsfeed, welcome. This channel exists to break down what's really happening in Nigerian politics without the noise, without the spin. Hit that subscribe button right now, and I mean right now, because your subscription is the only way you help me keep doing this work for you. Stay with me, this one gets very interesting. Let me set the scene properly so we're all working from the same foundation. In the 2023 presidential election, Peter Obi ran on the Labour Party. He was the only major party candidate with a Christian identity on the ballot. Tinubu ran with a fellow Muslim, Kashim Shettima, in what became the most controversial ticket in recent Nigerian electoral history. The Christian Association of Nigeria rejected it openly. The backlash was immediate. And what happened? The Christian communities across northern Nigeria, particularly in the Middle Belt states of Plateau, Benue, Southern Kaduna, Taraba, and Nasarawa, largely moved their votes to Peter Obi. These were not Igbo votes. These were Hausa, Berom, Tiv, and other northern minority Christian communities who looked at that Muslim ticket and said, "Not us." Peter Obi ended up with over 6 million votes. He won the FCT, Federal Capital Territory. He won Lagos, Tinubu's own backyard. And political analysts began identifying something significant. A distinct Christian northern vote bloc had emerged, and it was anchored to Peter Obi. Fast forward to 2025 and 2026, Obi has made clear he intends to run again. He has been campaigning actively, doing major television interviews, including a significant Arise TV interview just this April, where he told Nigerians directly, "Don't vote for me because I'm a Christian or because I'm from the Southeast. Vote for me because I'm committed to turning Nigeria around." That statement matters. It tells you he's trying to expand beyond his base, and it's getting attention in the North. At the same time, multiple credible analysts, including a senior Rivers State elder statesman, Kingsley Wale, have recently identified Obi as the opposition figure with the strongest potential to challenge Tinubu in 2027, specifically calling out moderate and Christian belters in the North as a key part of Obi's vote bank. The Council on Foreign Relations published an analysis just weeks ago, noting that if Tinubu has a soft underbelly going into 2027, it is his strained relationship with the northern political establishment. That is the situation we are unpacking today. But wait, before you think this is just about religion, let me show you why this is actually about something much deeper. It's about money, it's about broken promises, and it's about a North that feels it was used. Now, let's look at the structure, because in Nigerian politics, you can't understand the story without understanding the rules of the game. The electoral math. Nigeria's constitution requires that to win the presidency, you need the highest number of votes and at least 25% of the votes in 2/3 of the 36 states plus the FCT. That means 24 states minimum. This rule makes the North non-negotiable for any presidential candidate. The North has approximately 19 states. If you lose the majority of the northern vote, or if that vote is badly split, you are in serious trouble. Historical precedent backs this up. In 2015, when the North turned its back on Goodluck Jonathan, he won several southern states and still lost the presidency to Buhari. The lesson is simple and brutal. No candidate has won the Nigerian presidency without strong northern support, not one, in the Fourth Republic. The religious demographic. Nigeria is roughly 50% Muslim and 50% Christian, but within the North, the picture is more complex. The core Northwest and Northeast, Sokoto, Zamfara, Katsina, Kano, Jigawa, Boron are predominantly Muslim, but the Middle Belt, Plateau, Benue, Nasarawa, Taraba, Kwara, and parts of Southern Kaduna are significantly Christian. These states have millions of registered voters, and in 2023, those voters largely chose to Peter Obi. INEC and the process. The Independent National Electoral Commission will conduct the 2027 election. The political contest is effectively already open. Parties are positioning, coalitions are forming, and the ADC, African Democratic Congress, has emerged as a platform being used by the opposition coalition that includes elements around Peter Obi. Whether Obi ultimately contests on the ADC ticket or returns to Labour remains a live question. The grey area being exploited. There's a deliberate ambiguity in how the Tinubu administration has been handling opposition parties, particularly the Labour Party. Multiple credible reports suggest systematic destabilization of LP through internal crises and institutional manipulation. This is the political terrain Obi has to navigate.
Now we get to the real gist. Because this is not just about who Northern Christians will vote for. This is about a three-dimensional chess match between Tinubu, the Northern political establishment, and Peter Obi. And somebody is about to make a move that changes the board completely. First, what Tinubu is actually doing. The Tinubu administration clearly understands the problem. Since 2024, there has been a calculated charm offensive aimed at Christian communities. The most visible moment came in May 2025 when Tinubu attended the inauguration of Pope Leo XIV at the Vatican and traveled with 5 Catholic bishops. His spokesman, Sunday Dare, called it a masterstroke. And in a scene that went viral on social media, Tinubu and Peter Obi actually met at St. Peter's Square because Obi, as a devout Catholic and papal knight, was also there. Former Ekiti Governor Kayode Fayemi reportedly facilitated the exchange. Tinubu joked, "I should be the one welcoming you and Peter, and the head of the Nigerian delegation." Obi laughed and replied, "Yes, indeed, we are members of your delegation." Now, this moment got shared millions of times, but read it carefully. Tinubu needed that moment more than Obi did. A Muslim president traveling to the Vatican to attend a pope's inauguration, that is a direct, deliberate outreach to Christian voters. Why? Because without those voters, he loses. Second, the northern establishment is not enthusiastic. Here is something the mainstream coverage keeps underplaying. This is from a ThisDay live analysis published just this week, April 17, 2026. The Sai Tinubu chants that energized 2023 campaigning in northern states have lost noticeable decibels. The political support of northern governors and heavyweight politicians that was openly displayed in 2023 has cooled significantly. Northern elites who once fronted for Tinubu are now stalling. The piece notes that except for Bello Matawali and a few cabinet loyalists, the heavyweight northern APC figures are not leading the charge for his re-election. The grassroots enthusiasm in the north has clearly shifted. And here's the economic reason why, which we cannot ignore. Tinubu's removal of fuel subsidies, combined with the naira devaluation, created a cost of living crisis that hit the north particularly hard. Food prices surged, transport costs exploded. Farming communities already dealing with insecurity faced even deeper strain. A ThisDay analysis published just days ago put it directly. Across northern Nigeria, the pressures are real and immediate. Food prices have surged, transport costs have risen, and small businesses are under strain. That is the lived reality of northern Nigerians going into this election cycle. Third, the APC's own internal warning. This is a pattern interrupt moment because this fact is extraordinary. The North Central APC Forum, these are Tinubu's own people, released a statement warning the president directly. They said, looking at the results of the 2023 election, all the Christian-dominated areas in the north voted for Peter Obi, and we don't expect a different outcome in 2027. Read that again. Tinubu's own APC northern allies are telling him the northern Christians are going back to Obi. They are not switching to Tinubu even if he changes his running mate. And they raised another red flag. If Tinubu's people keep focusing money and attention on northern Christian communities while neglecting northern Muslim communities, they risk alienating both groups simultaneously. The worst possible scenario for an incumbent, losing both halves of the north. Fourth, Peter Obi's positioning. Obi has been deliberate about his messaging in 2026. He's on television regularly, he's making his case on economics, governance, and anti-corruption. Kingsley Wale, the Rivers State elder, described Obi's supporters in the north like this, and I'm going to quote the reasoning because it's important. Northern moderates and Christian belters see Obi as their opportunity to get free from domination, whether that domination is real or imagined. That phrase is key, because it tells you the emotional logic of the vote is not just about religion, it's about belonging. It's about feeling seen in a political system that has historically marginalized certain communities. Fifth, the opposition coalition factor. Obi is not operating alone. There is a broader opposition structure taking shape around the ADC. Atiku Abubakar, despite complicated relationships with Obi, brings northern Muslim networks. El Rufai, a former Kaduna governor who has broken with Tinubu, brings insider APC knowledge and northern connections. The question is whether this coalition can hold or whether personal presidential ambitions, particularly the tension between Obi and Atiku both wanting the top spot, tear it apart before it even becomes a threat. Now, if what I just laid out surprises you, especially that part about Tinubu's own northern APC allies warning him about the Christian vote, drop a comment below right now. Tell me, do you think northern Christians will actually follow through and vote Obi in 2027? I want to see your takes before we get to the part of this story that changes the whole picture. And I need you to stay with me for Section 7, because there is one argument being used to pull northern Christians away from Peter Obi that sounds very convincing on the surface, but when you examine it closely, it falls apart. We'll get to that. Let's zoom out and talk about what this actually means for Nigeria as a country, because the stakes go beyond who wins an election. The federal balance of power. Nigeria's political architecture has historically depended on a north-south bargain. The northern bloc provides the votes, the south provides the federal revenue from oil. That bargain is already on the strain. If the 2027 election produces a result where Tinubu, a southerner, loses the presidency primarily because the north withdrew support for him, it will trigger a fundamental renegotiation of how power is shared in this country. That is not a small thing. Economic consequences for ordinary Nigerians. Regardless of who wins, the economic signals going into 2027 are deeply concerning. Tinubu's approval at 37% midterm is driven almost entirely by economic pain. Inflation remains punishing, jobs are scarce. The Council on Foreign Relations, in an April 2026 analysis, noted that for millions of Nigerians, government talk of turning the corner rings hollow against the daily reality of rising prices and shrinking incomes. If the economy does not visibly improve by early 2027 and voters don't feel it in their pockets, incumbency becomes a liability, not an asset. Interfaith and inter-ethnic dynamics. This is delicate territory, but we have to name it. When northern Christians vote as a bloc against the Muslim ticket, and when that is used as a political talking point on both sides, it creates conditions where the election itself becomes a proxy for deeper religious anxieties. That is dangerous for social cohesion. Nigeria has seen what happens when those fault lines are inflamed. The responsible political leadership on all sides needs to de-escalate that narrative. Peter Obi himself has been trying to do this, explicitly telling voters not to vote for him because he's Christian. That is the right move. Whether others follow that lead is another question. Security implications.
The North's disaffection with Tinubu is partly driven by the ongoing security crisis, banditry in Zamfara, Sokoto, and Kebbi, farmer-herder violence in the Mid-Belt, continued Boko Haram and ISW activity in the Northeast. The Council on Foreign Relations in their April 2026 piece noted that Nigeria currently ranks 4th globally on the Global Terrorism Index. Communities that are experiencing insecurity vote with their grievances. That anger is a fuel that any opposition candidate will try to harness. This section is relevant, and here's why. The Council on Foreign Relations, one of America's most respected foreign policy institutions, published a major analysis specifically on the 2027 Nigerian election just weeks ago in April 2026. That is significant. It means Nigeria's 2027 election is on the radar of Western policy institutions as a geopolitically meaningful contest. What do they see? They see a Tinubu who has successfully consolidated political power domestically, weakening opposition parties, securing defections, but who faces a soft underbelly in his relationship with the northern political establishment. They also note Nigeria's ongoing security collaboration with the US military, which itself has become politically controversial domestically. For the diaspora, if you're Nigerian and you're watching from the UK, US, Canada, or Europe, understand that the international community is watching this election carefully. Nigeria is Africa's largest economy. A politically destabilized Nigeria or an election seen as deeply flawed will have consequences for foreign investment, for bilateral relationships, and for Nigeria's standing in international bodies. The Vatican moment with Tinubu was also worth noting internationally. It was an attempt to reshape Nigeria's image on the world stage, to show a Muslim president attending a Catholic pope's inauguration as a gesture of religious unity. Whether that plays domestically is one question, whether it plays internationally is another, and it seems designed to do both. Now, let me tell you the argument Tinubu's allies are using to try and flip northern Christians back to Tinubu. And I'll be honest with you, when I first heard it, I thought it was actually a strong argument until I looked at the numbers.
This is the section I promised you. Here is the strongest argument being pushed to pull northern Christians away from Peter Obi: security. Reno Omokori, who is a Tinubu supporter, made this argument publicly in March 2025. He said the Islamization fear that drove northern Christians to vote for Obi in 2023 was a fluke. He pointed to the Institute for Economics and Peace's Global Terrorism Index, claiming insecurity is at its lowest level since 2014 under Tinubu. He argued that northern Christians in the Kwajafa axis, from Zuru in Kebbi to Jembu in Taraba, have been able to return to their villages and farms for the first time. He also argued that Peter Obi hasn't visited northern Christian communities since 2023 and hasn't donated anything to their churches or societies. Now, let me be fair. This argument has some surface appeal. If northern Christians are genuinely safer today than they were in 2023, that removes one of the key emotional drivers of the Obi vote. That's a legitimate political argument. But here's where it falls apart. First, on the security numbers, the Council on Foreign Relations directly contradicts the narrative that security has meaningfully improved. Their April 2026 analysis notes that Nigeria still ranks 4th on the Global Terrorism Index globally, behind Pakistan, Burkina Faso, and Niger. 4th in the world. Communities in Plateau, Southern Kaduna, and the Northeast have not experienced the peace that Omokori describes. The violence against farming communities in the Middle Belt continues. Farmers who fled their lands have not uniformly returned. Second, on Tinubu's approval rating, 37% nationwide is not the number of a president who has delivered security and economic relief to a grateful North. If northern communities genuinely felt safe and prosperous, that number would be dramatically higher. The numbers don't support the narrative. Third, on the APC's own internal warning. Remember, Tinubu's own northern APC allies said they don't expect a different outcome in 2027 compared to 2023, when the northern Christian voted Obi. That is not the assessment of people who believe the security argument has worked. What people are also getting wrong is assuming this vote is purely religious. It is not. It is also about representation, about economic dignity, about communities in the Middle Belt who have watched government come and go for decades without feeling genuinely included in Nigeria's political project. Peter Obi, regardless of his faith, represents something to these communities, a disruption of the old patronage order. Here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. The real battle in 2027 is not Tinubu versus Obi, it's Tinubu versus the North. And the outcome depends entirely on whether one very specific thing happens in the next 9 months. Let me tell you exactly what to watch for between now and January 2027. Watch the VP slot. The single biggest variable in this election is whether Tinubu changes his running mate. If he drops Shetima for a Christian northerner, he might win back some northern Christian votes, but his own northern APC allies have warned he would lose 80% of northern Muslim votes in exchange. That is a catastrophic trade. If he keeps Shetima, the Muslim ticket stays, and the northern Christian bloc has no reason to shift. This decision, VP or no VP change, is the most consequential choice Tinubu will make before 2027. Watch for any signals on this by September or October 2026. Watch the opposition coalition stability. The Peter Obi, Atiku El-Rufai coalition is fragile. The biggest threat to Peter Obi's 2027 chances is not Tinubu. It's whether Atiku and Obi can agree who runs for president and who steps aside. If they split the opposition ticket again like 2023, Tinubu wins almost by default. If one of them steps down or the coalition holds, the math changes dramatically. Watch the economy. Tinubu's approval has inched up from 11% in early 2024 to around 37 to 40% by mid-2025. If the economic reforms start visibly translating to relief at the market, at the petrol station, and in people's bank accounts by mid-2026, that trajectory could continue upward. If it stalls or reverses, his incumbency becomes toxic. Watch the North Central governors. States like Benue, Plateau, Nasarawa, and Kwara are bellwether states. If their governors, some of whom are in the APC, start warming to the opposition or cooling on Tinubu in visible ways, that is your signal that the grassroots northern shift is hardening into an electoral reality. Best case scenario for Obi: the opposition coalition holds. Tinubu keeps his Muslim ticket. The economy stays painful. Northern Christians and youth vote in large numbers. Obi wins enough northern states plus his southeast and southwest youth base to cross the constitutional threshold. Worst case scenario for Obi: the coalition fractures. Atiku runs separately. The northern vote splits 3 ways. Tinubu uses incumbency advantages to consolidate APC governors and machinery. The election plays out like 2023 with opposition divided and Tinubu crossing the threshold by default. The long game if nothing changes. If Tinubu wins re-election with a fractured north and continued economic pain, you will see the demand for political restructuring, true federalism, resource control, constitutional reform intensify in a way that makes every previous conversation about it look mild. Let's close the loop I opened at the beginning. I asked, if both Muslim and Christian northerners pull away from Tinubu in 2027, who actually wins? Here is the measured answer. It depends entirely on whether the opposition can stay united. If Peter Obi or another opposition figure consolidates the anti-Tinubu vote, north and south, Christian and secular Muslim discontent, they have a real path. The numbers are there. Tinubu's approval at 37%, northern enthusiasm visibly cooled, the APC's own allies raising red flags, these are not the markers of an election foregone. But Nigerian politics has defeated cleaner calculations than this before. The structural advantages of incumbency, federal resources, party machinery, judicial processes are real, and the opposition's greatest enemy has always been itself. What I know for certain is this:
The Northern Christian vote is not going to Tinubu in 2027. The APC's own people have said so. The evidence on the ground says so. The question is simply whether Peter Obi or whoever carries the opposition standard can receive that vote, hold it together with everything else they build, and turn it into something that crosses the constitutional threshold. Nigeria is watching. The North is the key, and 2027 is closer than anyone is ready for. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think the Northern Christian vote will hold for Obi in 2027, or will Tinubu find a way to peel it back? Drop your take in the comments. I read every single one. If this breakdown gave you clarity on what's really going on, do me one favor. Share this video with one person who needs to understand what's at stake. Like the video, and most importantly, subscribe to Nigerianewsfeed. Your subscription is literally the only way you help me keep doing this kind of work. It doesn't cost you anything, and it means everything. I'll see you in the next one. Stay sharp.